Thompson Productions.
It was a layered operation that achieved many objectives, but it facilitated the growth of the state as well. And it facilitated that path of the dystopian nightmare, and the violation of our inherent rights. So that was an inherent example of the federal government's abuse of power.
Oh, Father, tell me, do we get what we deserve? Oh, we get what we deserve.
Holy cow. About a third of the building has been blown away.
And way down we go. Oh, way down we go. Say way down we go. And way down we go. Way down we go. Oh, 'cause they will run you down to the dark. Yes, then they will run you down till you fall. Oh, and they will run you down till you go. Yeah, till you can't crawl no more.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the No Way Jose podcast. This is part 3B of deep diving Dr. Painting's new research. We're going into the 3B of the threads. Essentially, I did talk to Wendy in between the last this episode and the last. And she said it just got a little lengthy. That was her explanation for that. Also, a little bit of side notes from the author. She did want to kind of stress that this is you could almost look at this as a little bit of a almost as a supplement to Aberration. And then almost I guess you could see as like a lead into the next book. So I guess like a teaser of sorts for the next book coming up. Although the book's going to be, I guess she's kind of implying the book's going to be, the implication I'm getting from the messages I'm getting from her is that I think the future book, this would make sense to me, is going to be probably less McVeigh-centered. So these threads are somewhat McVeigh-centered. Obviously, Aberration is. So I think it kind of, what I'm getting narratively, what I'm picking up is probably like almost a bridge here, narratively, between the books is kind of what we're seeing. Also, just interesting research, and I think these different threads, I think these are all going to coalesce into an interesting final thread where these things come together. It's kind of what I'm picking up. So we're going to get through to 3B today. Before we do that, we're going to take a moment and go ahead and recap the last episode, 3A. There is a thread that Wendy actually put together that is a little bit of a recap and also kind of gives you a little caveats prior type deal in it. So kind of an explainer for the an accompanying thread to all the different threads here. And in it, we're getting, with each episode, we're getting a recap. So I figured each episode we'd look back on the episode before. This one's pretty curt. It's part 3A, the one-armed man in Kingman. That's the one we covered last episode. It looked at the media and FBI's early investigations of remnants of the Arizona Patriots and Jack Oliphant, and briefly discussed the role of PATCON handler Don Jarrett in the latter. So we're going to get into today episode or part 3B, Looking for an Army, a continuation of part 3A, the one-armed man in Kingman, and an insanely long thread. So buckle up. Sounds like we might be in for a long one. I believe I read this one. I read a bunch of these a while back, so I do think I read this one. It's been a minute though, so I'll be going over it again. So I don't recall exactly how long this is. So we'll see what we're in for. Before we do, I do want to let you guys know, no ad read for today. If you are someone out there with a product that you would be interested in promoting, hit me up. My email is in the video description / podcast description below. You can also contact me at TowerGangJose on Twitter if you'd like to contact me. If you have a product that you think I would like, I always like new products and to share cool products with the world. So if that's something you're interested in, hit me up. But yeah, right now I'm in my other sponsors in a little bit of a break. So that is an option out there. Also, toplopsa.com if you want to get any sort of merch. Go to the Already Dead tab. That's where you can get some of my stuff if you do want to support the show. But hey, or obviously patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. But let's go ahead and get into the thread for today. And here we go. So it says as noted in the spring of 1993, after his significant attendance at the Tulsa Gun Show, McVeigh took up residence in Kingman, Arizona, staying first through the 4 years and then renting a place at a nearby trailer park. This is me again, another little bit of caveat for the audience I just recalled. This is something I did want to tell you. If I get really sweaty and gross today for the visual watchers, I do apologize. My AC is out again, so they're coming back tomorrow. I just had to do one installed, so I'm assuming they screwed up something when they installed it, so it shouldn't be a big deal. But tonight, I am sweaty. That's also why I'm recording in the main house as opposed to my normal recording area. The kiddos are packed into my master bedroom, which has all the AC units to keep them nice and cold, and I'm in the main house sweating. But that's what I'm doing to get a product out for you guys today. Oh well, whatever. Get a little bit of a sweat in. But let's keep it going back to the thread. Enough of that. He made calls to an organization in Phoenix headed by Bo Gritt's good friend Jack McLam to Linda Thompson, who accused him of being in the CIA, to a man in Grand Prairie, Texas, Roger Moore, and in late May made his first documented call to the National Alliance HQ in Hillsborough, West Virginia. So let's back up. So, okay. So Jack McLam, sounds to me like they're implying that McVeigh, okay. Yeah, sounds like the implication there is that, this Jack McLam accused McVeigh of being in the CIA, is what I'm interpreting from that. Let's keep it going. Here is Operation Vampire Killer 2000, This is the American Police Action Plan for Stopping World Government Rule, published by Police Against the New World Order. Okay, this seems like some sort of spook publication. Let's read this. It says, attention, aid and abet police newsletter subscribers. Your editor and staff of officers and private citizens were very pleased and proud to be asked to assist the Police Against the New World Order in the production of this police officer/U.S. military manual, Operation Vampire Killer 2000. As you know, we are also spending many hours a week with the investigation of the Sheriff Gene Matthews, Gordon Call. I've done an episode on that forever ago. Go check that out if you're interested in it. Also, Ken Silva's in a lot of great reporting on Gordon Call. He's kind of one of the originals in the, I guess you say the dissident right movement, maybe. Weaver, Harris, Waco homicide cases. The purpose of this manual is to get our fellow police officers and military personnel informed and then to join their fellow patriotic Americans in killing off the imperialistic New World Order plan of Bush, Rodham, Clinton, and Perot. Okay, yeah, I'm correct. This is definitely some sort of I don't know, soldier of fortune type stuff. Publication. We hope all of you will request as many of these police manuals as you can afford and get them into the hands of your fellow police officers and military colleagues. We now have the cost per copy down to under the cost of photocopying a single manual. If you purchase 5 to 12 copies, it is $3 each. As you purchase more, the price is reduced even lower. I believe this publication of the newly formed association, Police Against the New World Order, is a very important publication that is purposely set up to prove to hard-headed fellow police officers, soldiers, and private citizens that this plot to destroy our free republic is absolutely real and well along the way to completion. The reader will notice the manual also tells the police/soldier readers what actions to take if they do not want to be the enforcers for this treasonous plot to enslave their fellow Americans. All of the officers, soldiers, and private citizens who work at NWO are volunteers. This means that 100% of every $1 that comes into this new police/soldier association goes to getting an Operation Vampire Killer 2000 manual into the hands of their colleagues. It's my hope that our subscribers will show their support for this very important program by ordering extra copies of this manual and helping to get out as soon as possible to our brother and sister protectors of the people and to those fellow Americans in the private sector who will help do the same. I am looking forward to your joining us in this very important pro-America effort. Remember, tyranny cannot be brought to the door of any American if the enforcers refuse to promote tyranny. And how will we refuse? By upholding the oath we took to defend and protect our countrymen from all enemies. Yours in freedom, Jack McLam. Officer Jack McLam, retired. So this is from the Aid and Abet Police newsletter. So this kind of is a demonstration of who this feller is, one of these people that McVeigh is making calls to, which I know in my coverage I frequently do bring up. How McVeigh had an act for contacting all these different other, I guess, dissident right figures. The founder of the National Alliance, William Pierce, was, of course, the author of McVeigh's favorite book, The Turner Diaries. Here's a thing of it. Here's an article that says the Oklahoma bomb eerily resembles events in the novel. I guess we can read this one. You guys, if you've been following my show, probably know this, but we'll drive the point home again. The terrorist bombing of a federal building in Oklahoma City bears an eerie resemblance to events in a white supremacy fantasy novel, but the author of the book scoffs at the idea of any ties between the two. Guerrillas in the Turner Diaries launch a fascist revolt against the U.S. government by bombing FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The attack parallels the tragedy in Oklahoma in the following ways. Timing. The explosion occurred at 9:15 in the book, 9:04 at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The bomb. In both cases, it was a simple device made with a mixture of fuel oil and thousands of pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. The vehicle. In the book, the bomb is packed into a stolen truck, which is parked in the basement of the building. Investigators say the Oklahoma bomb was placed in a rented truck parked outside the building. The result. The plan in the Turner Diaries was to produce an open-air blast wave powerful enough to blow the facade off a massive and strongly constructed building. It says, our worries about the relatively small size of the bomb were unfounded. The damage is immense, the fictional diarist writes. He tells of a huge gaping hole in the ground and glass shattered on dozens of nearby buildings. The Oklahoma explosion collapsed the front facade of a 9-story building and created a crater 30 feet long and 8 feet deep. The target, both the fictional and real terrorists, went after U.S. agencies. The building in Oklahoma City housed more than a dozen agencies, including the Secret Service. The resemblance between fact and fiction jumped out at Joel Brescian, regional director for the Arizona office of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, as soon as investigators realized that the bomb was made from fertilizer. And it may be no coincidence as authorities probe links between suspects and paramilitary groups angered by government efforts at gun control. The terrorism in the Turner Diaries starts when the U.S. government bans the private ownership of guns. The book, written by William L. Pierce under the pseudonym of Andrew McDonald, was published in 1978 by the National Alliance, a white supremacy group he founded. Among the right-wing extremists and racists, that's the Bible, Brescian said. Pierce reached at his compound in Hillsborough, West Virginia on Friday, discounted any connection between Wednesday's bombing and a book written nearly 2 decades ago. It's really, really grasping, he said, noting that many adventure and spy novels include bomb plots. His novel details a war of extermination against non-whites in the U.S. that expands to international genocide. The Turner Diaries already has served as a blueprint for a white supremacy group known as the Order, Brescian said. The group committed a string of bank and armored car robberies in the mid-1980s. But Brescian and others who keep tabs on hate groups didn't think that paramilitary associations had the know-how or the icy ruthlessness to follow the book's recipe for a bombing. If that is indeed what happened, he said, right-wing extremism has taken a brand new turn in this country. Two days after the Oklahoma City bombing, a woman who operated a photocopy joint in Kingman told the FBI that throughout the spring and summer of 1993, McVeigh spent an inordinate amount of time there on a nearly a daily basis. McVeigh, she said, sometimes talked to her about, quote-unquote, the group, which met once a month at a local Kingman restaurant and who spent time in the nearby Hula Pie Mountains training. Oh, we just talked about in 3A. Which is where in 95, Arizona Patriot three-finger Monty Ross was staying at some paramilitary training camp and where Jack Oliphant lived. 48 confirmed that McVeigh made a lot of copies at a local business, as did McVeigh's incessant mailing of a photocopied literature to his sister, military buddies, friends back home, and pretty much to anyone who would pay attention to him, and many who did not. Here is almost looks like one of these an example of these photocopied literatures. This is APRA News, as U.S. government initiates open warfare against American people. Not going to read it, but you guys get the gist. Here's another photo of another more of this of their internal propaganda, I guess, the stuff that he's photocopying and distributing. Bear in mind, we just read that flyer earlier where they're talking about, buy these and keep giving them out. So it sounds like McVeigh is one of these people. Here's more pictures of examples of the like, it seems to me. This stuff is kind of hard to read, to be honest. It's a little bit of chicken scratch. During this particular stint in Kingman, McVeigh worked as a guard at a local security company and supplemented his income by selling military surplus and other items at nearby gun shows. Assumingly in connection with his side gig, McVeigh made numerous calls to an exotic weapons dealer in Lake Havasu, Arizona, and various gun show promoters in surrounding states. And here is an article from September 21st, 1986, as soldiers of fortune set sights on exotic weapons. This is from Las Vegas, Nevada. Mercenaries and camouflage-clad weapon enthusiasts gawked as armed dealers hawked exotic submachine guns, blowguns, and knives of all shapes and sizes at the Soldier of Fortune convention. The Combat Weapons Expo was one of the highlights Friday of the 7th annual gathering sponsored by Soldiers of Fortune magazine at the Sarah Hotel. Some of the 800 participants gathered in clusters in the casino to exchange war stories or talk about mercenary missions. At a booth displaying a small helicopter made by Air Command of Vail, Colorado, dollar bills and coins were stuffed in a jar next to a sign that read, "Buy one for the Contras, the Nicaraguan rebels." Conventioneers browsed through stacks of t-shirts that carried not-so-subtle messages. Gun control is being able to hit your target, and God, guns, and guts made America. Let's keep all three. 3 scantily clad women signed autographs on a female commando calendar featuring women in battlefield poses and armed with the latest firearms and knives. Stacks of books ranging from tactical employment of mortars to countering terrorism were on sale. John Stupero of the J.R. Stupero, Colorado, in Meyer, Arizona, or company, Stupero Company, I'm an idiot. The J.R. Stupero Company in Meyer, Arizona, which makes blowguns and darts, demonstrates his proficiency with the device. It's one of man's oldest weapons, Stupero said, sending a dart flying at a target 10 feet away. I can blow a dart 100 yards for distance, 100 feet for accuracy. Which, by the way, it is for those listening and for, I guess, for those watching that may have not picked up on that, it is highlighted John Stupero, so I have a feeling maybe there's significance there, unless just for some reason it was highlighted whenever Wendy found this excerpt. So perhaps keep an ear out for that name. It might bear some significance. Fleming Firearms of Collinsville, Oklahoma, featured its new Model 53K, a 14-inch handheld automatic weapon capable of firing 700 rounds per minute. It was touted as ideal for equalizing the odds in one-man undercover operations. Beretta, an Italian company, featured a complete family of portable firearms suitable to all tactical requirements. Joyce Krzyzanowski, a representative for Philadelphia-based Action Arms Limited, explained the workings of a Uzi automatic pistol manufactured by Israeli Military Industries. "We sell only to dealers, not to individuals," she said. "They have to have a federal firearms license to buy from us." Potential buyers were taken to a scenic mountain area west of the city to test the weapons. Sunbathers around the hotel swimming pool watched participants in camouflage clothing demonstrate realistic knife-fighting techniques. In another demonstration, men rappelled down the side of a building in a simulated hostage rescue. Daryl, a co-worker of McVeigh's, who he occasionally went out shooting with, told the FBI that in early summer '93, McVeigh gave him a free pass to attend a gun show in Kingman, where McVeigh had a booth. Here is an excerpt from something here. It says McVeigh was selling survival-type booklets, empty cases for LAW rockets, night flares, P-38s, military can openers, a few knives, and an assortment of shirts from the military. McVeigh also had for sale quite a few military and militia-type magazines. Under the table, McVeigh had a box with copies of the Turner Diaries, which were for sale. McVeigh also had books called Paper Trails, which deal with false identification. Blank, or I guess redacted, said some of the brochures that McVeigh had for sale deal with explosives. One book may have had a title such as Anarchy. Redacted believes from his military service, U.S. Navy, that this was a book used by U.S. military personnel when behind enemy lines. This book contains information on how to construct homemade bombs. McVeigh did not have any pistols or rifles for sale. And then there's another photo of the Turner Diaries. All right, let's keep going. Darrell told the FBI that he spent much of the day at the gun show, mostly talking to McVeigh, who tried to get Darrell to take some time off to attend some type of militia training camp located somewhere in northwest Arizona or southern Nevada, and implied that he'd been there before. While McVeigh never claimed to Darrell that he belonged to any militia, he did mention the name of a man who is associated with the Arizona Patriots, whose name Darrell could not remember. It wasn't Jack Oliphant, however, because during the same discussion, McVeigh mentioned Jack and told Darrell that Jack was unstable. At some point, Darrell saw McVeigh talking quite a bit to two men who had a table near McVeigh's and were selling underground literature. Richard Dick Kaufman, National Alliance Coordinator in Bullhead City, a town next door to Kingman, later told the FBI that he manned a booth at the same gun show where he handed out pamphlets about the National Alliance. Here is an example of it. Not going to read all of it because I don't think that really matters as much. That's not the point. Just an example of it. But here is a little pamphlet that clearly shows the roots of civilization from William Pierce, some sort of piece from him. He's the guy who wrote the Turner Diaries, aid secret, what the government and the media don't want you to know. So just kind of the sort of flavor of stuff you expect in here. Gun control, not what it seems. The beast as saint, the truth about Martin Luther King. So just kind of things you'd expect to see in the 90s and some sort of soldier of fortune type of thing. Here's another one. How this happened, or Americans of European descent have lost control of their country. How this happened. Why have we not resisted the takeover of America? Who rules America today? So yeah, I mean, these sorts of things. Soon after the show, McVeigh called nearly every casino in Laughlin, Nevada, the last to hurrahs, where it just so happened a national alliance was being held at the same time. Speaking at the same NA meeting was a man who, along with his brother, was mentioned in one of the earliest post-Oklahoma City bombing news reports mentioning Oliphant and the Arizona Patriots. So let's go ahead and read this news clipping. All right. So Arizona has long been a training ground for the fast-growing militia movement. The Arizona Patriots, a forerunner of today's militias, had members who were involved with a number of government protest groups in the 1980s. 3 Patriots went to prison, and 2 others were placed on probation in 1987 for applying to rob an armored car. They planned to use the money to finance a 320-acre paramilitary training camp near Kingman. Authorities allege that the Patriots intend to eventually overthrow the government. Among other things, they plotted to bomb Arizona dams, power plants, IRS offices, synagogues, and abortion clinics, authorities claimed. In prison were Jack Maxwell Oliphant, Daniel Taylor Author, and Monte Dayton Ross. FBI surveillance tapes of Arizona Patriots meetings in 1985 include the voices of former television actor Ty Hardin, best known for his role of Bronco Lane in the late 50s series Bronco, and Gerald Jack McLam, a former Phoenix police sergeant. Neither was accused of misconduct, however. McLam, a highly decorated officer, is active in the militia movement and hosts a shortwave radio talk show with William Cooper, who publishes a newspaper for the militia movement from his home in St. John's. By the way, I'm pretty sure I think we actually read this in a previous one of these threads, but I think it's worthwhile reading again since we've been reintroduced to some of these names and they may have new significance reading this now. McLam, who founded Police Against the New World Order, often appears with former Arizona Governor Evan Meacham and Graham County Sheriff Richard Mack, who has attracted national attention for his resistance to the Brady gun control law. McLam also is a business associate of James Beau Gritz, a 92 presidential candidate of the Populist Party and a decorated ex-Green Beret lieutenant colonel. The two attempted to negotiate the surrender of Randy Weaver, a white supremacist, during a standoff in Idaho with the U.S. authorities in 92. Weaver's wife and son were shot to death during the standoff. 2 Arizona Patriots who trained at Oliphant's primitive Camp near Kingman later were involved in the slaying of a Phoenix motorist in a traffic dispute. They claimed self-defense and were acquitted. Documents show that several Arizona patriots also had connections to the Committee of the States members who were indicted in Las Vegas in a 1986 murder plot against IRS officials. And then this next part of the thread, it says the article was talking about the Isaacson brothers, sharing another article here. It says motorist is shot to death in argument over tailgating. It says a confrontation between three motorists on the Black Canyon Freeway in Phoenix has resulted in the shooting death of one man and felony charges brought against two brothers accused in connection with the slaying. Phoenix Police Sergeant Ken Johnson said Robert Isaacson, 23, of Phoenix, was arrested Sunday of one count of second-degree murder in the death of Robert Albert Romo, 25, of Phoenix. Robert Isaacson's brother, Richard Isaacson, 28, of Phoenix, was charged with one count of aggravated assault, Johnson said. Romo was shot once in the head following a confrontation with the Isaacson brothers over tailgating. He was pronounced dead during surgery at a Phoenix hospital. Johnson said Romo stopped in right southbound lane of the freeway. One second. In the freeway, and left his four-wheel drive pickup with a 3-foot wooden dowel, apparently upset that he was being followed too closely by the Isaacsons. As Romo approached Isaacson's car, the brothers each pulled out handguns. Romo was shot as he retreated to his car. Okay, let's keep going. And it says Richard and his younger brother Robert grew up in Kingman as young men in the 1980s. They had spent considerable time on Jack's property, and Robert had officially lived there at the same time as Three Finger Monte and as many troubled young men would before and after. This is bearing some similarities in my head to the Kehoe brothers, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Both brothers were featured in Jack's homemade movies, whatever the hell that means. Let's read this excerpt here. It says a review was conducted of video cassette tapes seized during a search conducted on December 15th, 1986 at the Kingman, Arizona ranch of Jack Maxwell Oliphant. These tapes were reviewed to determine what the contents were thereon and are as noted. Item Q-158 consists of a plastic bag containing 14 VHS tapes described as followed. Taped with label captioned Horse Laugh. A review of this tape determined that it was photographed by an individual calling himself Rick, no last name mentioned, whose face was never shown. Rick photographed primarily Margot Oliphant and an individual he called Robert, possibly identical with Robert Dean Isaacson, as they wandered around Jack Oliphant's ranch on horseback. The photographer, Rick, referred to himself as being a smoker and from West Virginia and referred to a dog named Schnicken Phonetic as his dog. Okay, I mean, I guess I heard movies and I jumped to conclusions here, but so, all right, whatever. I mean, it was an older time. They had a lot more recorded things, but I guess there was he showed up on one of the recordings is the key thing to take away here. Obviously not as salacious as it was in my head when I heard about videos, but still interesting nonetheless and establishes the connection further. Let's keep going. Robert told the undercover agent who'd infiltrated Jack's faction of the Arizona Patriots that he planned to do armed en masse robberies of convenience stores and fast food joints and intended to gain experience by bombing synagogues. Let's go and read this. On July 9th, 1986, Special Agent MC Comas traveled to Oliphant's ranch, where upon his arrival he was told by Oliphant that Ross had just blown off his thumb and 2 fingers while making a pipe bomb. Comas was shown the explosion scene, and upon inspecting the scene, located several pieces of galvanized pipe bomb in nearby trees and a portion of what appeared to be a human thumb. S.A. MC Comas was later told by Robert Isaacson that Isaacson and Ross had planned to do armed robberies of convenience stores and fast food chains by using masks, and that they intended to gain experience by bombing Jewish synagogues. Isaacson further told Comas that Jack Oliphant had a plan to get money by robbing a armored car. All right. According to Isaacson, when the FBI searched Jack's property, they failed to find barrels containing diagrams of dams on the Colorado River and of the largest East Coast electrical switching station, both of which had been possible targets for destruction. After the Oklahoma City bombing, Richard wrote a lengthy and interesting account about, among other things, his time with Jack Oliphant. In it, he described the shooting incident. Let's go ahead and read this. It says, I and my brother Robert were not arrested or charged with Jack Oliphant, but shortly afterwards, on July 5th, 1987, I and Robert were attacked on Interstate 17 just inside the city limits of Phoenix by two other brothers, Robert and Randy Romo. I was driving a mid-sized sedan with my brother Robert as a passenger. The Romo brothers were each driving two separate pickup trucks. Robert Romo pulled his truck in front, and Randy Romo pulled his truck behind us and forced us to stop. Robert Romo had been freebasing steroids. He was working out for the Mr. Arizona weightlifting title. His brother and Randy was also a weightlifter. My brother, Robert Isaacson, shot Robert Romo in the head, which resulted in his death. I and my brother Robert were each arrested for investigation of murder. When the grand jury returned a no true bill, the elected Maricopa County Attorney Collins would not allow her release from jail, but continued to prosecute. Anyways, let's keep going. He said that although he was held on a charge of aggravated assault, the charges against him were dropped the day before his trial. His brother was tried for the same charge as well as manslaughter and second-degree murder, but was found not guilty. In late 1989, Richard visited Jack, now out of prison on parole. Jack introduced him to skinheads from various areas of the country, including San Diego, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. One of them he described as the youngest person ordained as a pastor by Richard Butler of Aryan Nations, who later married one of Randy Weaver's daughters. Another one was Johnny Bangirder, and here is a photo. At the time, Johnny and his friends were rising stars at Aryan Nations, where they were getting to know all the big names in the movements. Here is an excerpt from, I believe, Committee of the States from Sherry Seymour. Says this is from a chapter that says Skinheads. It says Las Vegas skinhead leader Johnny Bangirder published an article in an Aryan Nation newsletter entitled Skinheads. Why? An introduction to the article was written by Richard Butler, which noted that Bangirder had written his article while attending the 1988 Aryan Nations Congress. Butler added, yes, the skinheads came to the 88 Congress. They came from the alien crime-infested cities of what was America. They decked themselves and camped in the symbols that their great-grandfathers had rejected and fought against. Camped among the tall pines and cedars, their faces beams and smiles, laughter dancing from the lips. They were among their own kindred. None worked harder to keep the grounds clean. None were more helpful in every respect. For a little while they were free of the racial scum and filth of home. In the article that followed, Bangirder wrote that he was born in the small town of Cedar City, Utah, where he attended an all-white school in an all-white neighborhood. When his mother divorced his father, she and the children moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, where he attended a school full of noisy blacks, screaming and referring to the teacher as an F and honky. Bangirder ultimately left school at the age of 14, became a punk rocker, then a Nazi. His story went as follows. Followed. I left elementary school to go to the 6th grade center, which was 20 miles across the city in the heart of the West Side, known as Niggertown to us. All the kids were afraid to go for fear of the gangs of blacks that ran the schools. Some would say that this was an exaggeration just to scare the white kids, but the first day that I was bussed around town, it was like a roller coaster ride. 25 minutes into the bus ride, it came true. Hundreds of blacks, kids, moms, dads, whole families ran at the buses, throwing rocks, bottles, dead cats, garbage can lids, and every other week a pellet gun or .22 caliber was shot at the buses. Just a real nightmare came true. As we entered the school, I saw school patrol cars and a 15-foot gate with a truant officer opening and shutting the gate for the buses to enter. Here's another photo of Bangirder and the like. Here's another excerpt here. It says Conversations between Wendy Painting and Johnny Bangirder, 2011 to 2023. Damn it. Give me a second. It just kicked me all the way back. I am sorry. That was something. All right, here we go. Conversation between Wendy Painting and Johnny Bangirder, 2011 to 2023. The road I was on eventually led me to a place called Aryan Nations in northern Idaho. I ended up becoming a spokesperson for the skinhead movement. Aryan Nations was perfectly comfortable inviting me to make appearances with Richard Butler. I got to know a lot of the people in the movement, a lot of big names. We pretty much knew everyone. All right. We knew the Trockmans and Louis Beam. We knew the Elohim City people, but not that well. They came to Aryan Nations sometimes. I don't want to say that we looked down on the Elohim City people, but they seemed too hillbilly-ish. That's how we viewed them. Anytime we met people from there, it seemed like there was ultimately something recognizably wrong with them mentally. But every time we would give them another chance and talk to them, and we always came away the same conclusion. They sucked. In 1988, during a trip my family made to Aryan Nations, we met Danny and Dennis Mahon. They were considered some whacked out motherfuckers, and they were. They were nuts. They were also comedians. They would always put on these little skits at Aryan Nations, them and Dave Holloway. Holloway would come out with Kirk Lyons, the attorney for cause. They would all put on this little comedy show with skits. They'd have everybody laughing. The Mahon brothers were real clowns, real serious jokesters. You just couldn't take them seriously. They were always joking, always had a bag of tricks in their pockets, and lots of funny stories. One story they told over and over was about how one of them, not sure if it was Danny or Dennis, urinated on Air Force One. Every time I saw those guys, they told this story. I remember the Mahons talking about their master of disguise bullshit. It was hard to take the Mahons seriously, but being serious wasn't their claim to fame. Their claim to fame was the Air Force One incident. At the time, we really didn't have a clue that they were as dangerous as they were. An older couple affiliated with Aryan Nations had introduced Johnny and friends to Jack Oliphant, who in turn introduced them to the Isaacson brothers. Here's a cool little photo. Looks like some sort of Aryan type of art, which is pretty sick looking, I'll be honest. Here is Calling Our Nation to All Aryan Brothers of the World. Some more Aryan literature. All right. Here's more conversations between Wendy Painting and Johnny Bangurter. It says, I met Richard and Robert Isaacson through Jack Oliphant. They were in their 20s at the time, and we were in our teens and early 20s. Both were phenomenal firearms experts, military brats from Kingman who ended up getting into the movement. The Isaacsons were the only people who made it out of the Arizona Patriot sting who didn't end up getting arrested for the plot to blow up the Ogden IRS building. They were involved in the plot and told me the entire story about how they tucked and ducked and rolled. Richard went this way with a shotgun and Robert went the other way, and they got out of there and got out of the FBI's grasp. They had done this whole MacGyver escape thing. They wanted to meet us because they heard we were straight edge types, and at one point we were. They were very against doing any drugs, including coffee and sugar. They were very polite, respectful, and well-mannered, almost to the point where it was uncomfortable. If you were at a table eating with them, you'd worry about whether your elbows were on the table. They were very into body language and how you carried yourself. They talked about it a lot. How you were supposed to talk, how you hold your head, your shoulders. These were things they tried to teach us. They talked about it consistently. They were associated with the National Alliance, but really they belonged to a group of their own. Not the Silent Brotherhood, but the two Silent Brothers. There was nothing like those two. They were a whole unique situation unto themselves. The Isaacson brothers never did anything or went anywhere without each other. They would both get the same job, and if one of them got fired, the other would quit. They couldn't even get dates because if one got a date, they wouldn't go without the other one. They were almost like twins. They kind of lived in a bubble. They were very isolated by choice. They were nice to us, but most people found them hard to get along with. I find this particularly interesting, giving the whole, the Sunshine people, I forget to think, considering that was a part of Jack Oliphant's past. So, all right, let's keep going. One person told me, she says, here's another conversation between Wendy Painting and Redacted. The Isaacsons were very serious, hardcore people. They were people you'd encounter in the movement who were not opposed to harming innocent people. People like the Isaacson brothers had the mentality that innocent people were just casualties of war. They were standoffish, but while Robert could be a real nice guy, Richard was very stiff and serious. He could come off as arrogant, a real asshole. This is a guy who raised a little puppy, trained it, made best friends with it, then killed it because he wanted to toughen himself up. He told us that story. To raise a dog just to kill it, why would you want to condition yourself to be that heartless? That's the kind of person you were dealing with when you dealt with Richard Isaacson. I know that Richard had a dark heart. We all knew that. That is insane. I have to point out that example, considering the fucking process church, and that's literally what most people would assume is what's going on behind the scenes. That's what's heavily implicated when you look at the process church. So I don't know. This very much ties into other parapolitical research. So I don't know, to even bring that up, that he just did that on his own. I have a feeling that there very likely was learned behavior. I doubt he just did that on his own, but I don't know. Who knows? Let's keep moving. The brothers told Johnny and his friends about the shooting incident. So here's more from Wendy Painting and Johnny Bangirder. The person had a stick. They had guns. They were on their way back from a shooting practice where they were trained to shoot and kill, and they killed somebody, just a construction worker on his way home who cut them off. Both cars pulled over, and the other guy grabbed a dowel rod out of his back seat. Roger said like he was pulling out a rifle, and then bam, just like that, Robert shot him, killed him. They were proud of it and bragged about it. They didn't need to do it. I remember thinking, fuck, that's the way it was with Richard, especially though you were nothing more than target. 2 in the head, 2 in the chest. That's how he thought. Both brothers were masters of weapons, left and right-handed weapon retention and takeaway. They could enter shooting contests with the Phoenix Police and FBI, and they could win. They would beat everyone in every damn contest. They trained with James Jarrett. Jared trained the Seattle SWAT team, Las Vegas SWAT team, LA SWAT team, a few others, and the FBI. That's who trained Richard and Robert Isaacson. They loved it. They looked up to him. Here is a photo of James Jarrett instructing Maxine Chen during a firearms class at a range near Phoenix. So the Isaacsons brothers trained with who? Says Wendy here, and then she has a couple excerpts here. So let's go ahead and read this. So this says Phoenix, James Region, Jarrett, warrior, man, weapon still in hand, is a precision fit for any profile of the perfect militia commander. He's a demolitions and guerrilla warfare expert who sees some FBI agents as arrogant prigs and believes the Drug Enforcement Administration is out of control. Jarrett is a Vietnam veteran and a National Rifle Association member and a combat shootist with a partial claw for a right hand. Torn in a grenade accident, the hand was rebuilt with bone from a rib and tissue from his backside. Jarrett said he gave surgeons a pistol as a mold to his grip and trigger finger would be saved. He blitzes editors with letters railing against elitist progressive liberals, embezzlement of civil liberties, the affirmative nonsense program. And at a 1986 briefing at an army post south of Phoenix, local law enforcers were told of Jarrett's association with the Arizona Patriots and other militia organizations. They said he was the Southwest's most dangerous terrorist. It was just a hoot, Jarrett remembers. I happened to be working undercover for the Arizona Attorney General at the time. All right. Was supposedly working undercover at the time. All righty. Let's keep moving. And then here we go. Damn it. Second. Here we go. We'll start this with him. Went precious books. Aristotle, Freud, Plutarch. It didn't set well among phlegmatic, hard-drinking cowboys. I was isolated, put outside the circle because I read, he said. I realized not only were these people not intellectuals, they were partially anti-intellectual or patently anti-intellectual. And I saw in that a recipe for disaster. My God, these people are going to vote. Jarrett also saw himself a curious self-starter who was well-read but far from well-educated. His return to Arizona was a cerebral binge. He obtained an Associate of Arts degree from Phoenix College, then a Bachelor's of Science, summa cum laude from Arizona State, followed by a Master's. Studies combined what he knew best: justice, law enforcement, domestic resistance movements, and unconventional warfare. To keep research fresh, he again slid undercover to work inside the Aryan Brotherhood and Arizona Patriots for federal and state agencies. Sounds exactly like PATCON, but let's keep moving. But that was several years ago. Now Jared's life centers more on obtaining a doctorate to go along with the undergraduate and graduate degrees he obtained, teaching handguns at his U.S. Marksmanship Academy and training horses. Most of the militiamen he knew have moved away or since the Oklahoma City bombing are recycling encrusted past for visiting reporters. Jarrett doesn't know the newer generation. He hasn't met McVeigh, Terry Nichols, Michael Fortier, and other figures allegedly linked to the April 19 Oklahoma City bombing, despite their histories in Kingman, Arizona, 160 miles northwest of Phoenix. but he's an expert witness to the type. It starts with the right, these kind of radicals, he explains. A better word is extremist. Person who goes beyond what's acceptable morally and even socially. Is an ideology that says, well, we will do things that otherwise would not be accepted, which usually indicates they will be sucked right in. Jarrett must have found the Isaacson brothers to be more serious than the earlier Ty Hardin faction of the Arizona Patriots worth teaching, despite their political and racial proclivities and affiliations, right? Or was something else going on? Here's another excerpt from an article. Survival was the theme in April 1985 when Hardin sponsored a seminar in Prescott that featured a training session on weapons. The need was for such training is obvious. Hardin said at the meeting, our borders are being covered by subversives, by tyranny. Hardin said, the government has allowed a constant flow of aliens into our nation. We're becoming so mongrelized the effectiveness of our Constitution is being diminished. The Gestapo movement started with the IRS. The government is training SWAT teams to put down patriots. The survival course featured James Jarrett of Phoenix, a former police officer in Green Beret who described himself as a mercenary. So this guy's a Green Beret as well. So this guy's Green Beret, police detective. Man, I mean, it sounds obviously redundant to say he glows because he's admitted to being undercover, but then also he's an undercover guy. Man, this guy glows strong. But once again, he admitted to it. So the survival corps, okay. The 13 people in attendance include 2 Prescott police officers who were investigating the Patriots and a reporter. Jarrett was less than happy when his name was included in a newspaper account of the meeting. Wacko was his description of the Patriots, and he vowed, never again. Here is, that's a photo of James Jarrett. So as it says, in 1968, Jarrett was honorably discharged, became Officer Jarrett with LAPD. At 24, with looks going on 19, he went undercover among students for Democratic Society, which I'm pretty sure that's a front thing too, if I recall correctly, at Pierce College and California State University. Northridge, then factions much more serious than war protesters, Milton Weatherman and the Black Panthers. Holy crap. In the mid-70s, after another stint in Vietnam had ended, Jarrett took off to Texas, Wyoming, Idaho, and Arizona. He trained horses, escorted terrorists. All right. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of that. That's kind of redundant, a lot of the other stuff, but that one highlighted portion was what was important there. Let's keep moving. See another. It says a stoic young cowboy was undercover agent against militia movement. I just figured let's go through the highlighted portions of this one. Just kind of going more of bio information. It highlights again. He's a demolitions and guerrilla warfare expert. Here's another one. At a 1986 briefing at an army post south of Phoenix, local law enforcement were told of Jarrett's association with the Arizona Patriots and other militia organizations. They said he was the Southwest's most dangerous terrorist. It was just a hoot. I happened to be working undercover. Okay, so that's the same one from before. Okay, so this is just the same. Oh, god dang it. It did the stupid go back thing again. Give me a second. I hate that do that. Which, by the way, Wendy was nice enough to make a PDF. I just keep forgetting to go to the PDF. So, sorry, guys. Give me a second. All right, cool. I think this is right where we're at. Okay, cool. All right, the Isaacsons would attend numerous meetings held by Benger's crew in late 91 and early 92. So we would have these meetings at our house, sometimes with 50, 60 people until it was standing room only. And the Isaacsons would attend because we were Christian identity. We would begin with a prayer, Psalm 91, and they didn't like it. They were atheists to the core. It was hardcore reality with them, facts and the laws of nature. They would hold an apple and say, there is no God. Everyone look at this apple. This is an apple. And they drop this apple and say, why does the apple drop? Because of gravity. Gravity is a law. They wanted to impress this upon everyone. Richard was very by the book, all about law and order, the law of gravity, the law of nature. There's no God. He was it had to be a fact or I don't want to hear about it type guy. We were always kind of scared of Richard because he gave that feeling of, gosh, if he finds out I smoked pot, he's going to break my neck. They would talk about distribution of literature, organizing groups, getting people together, starting up groups in other towns. How you form a group? How do you mentorship? How do you screen people? They were focused on literature and emphasized how important it was to do everything legally. They never talked about anything illegal. It didn't matter who you were. They refused to discuss anything that could ever implicate them in a crime. The Isaacsons taught us to be leery of meeting people in motels. They taught us never to do that. They told me that horrible stories about meeting with the Arizona Patriots in the motel. They went to one motel meeting and it was a setup. That lesson would become important later. They trained us what to do if we were stopped or pulled over by the police, how to handle them. We got to be very good at it. They taught us a lot about the law. It was almost like we went to school with the Isaacsons. I went to law school with the Isaacsons. Richard had an intensity in his eyes, but very intentionally affected that. He would school us on how to look, how to make eye contact, how to talk to someone. They taught us how to act. If you didn't look like a cop, act like a cop, and carry yourself a certain way, they wanted nothing to do with you. They sized everyone up. That's the way they thought. Everything around them was something they needed to evaluate. Sound like very analytical fellas, but it wasn't all talk. Here's more. The Isaacsons would sometimes come and train with us, and eventually they were coming once a week. It was intensive training, physical and mental. We hated it. They were very strict and disciplined. They wanted us to train us to be Spartans, and when they saw that we drank coffee and put sugar in our coffee, they were disappointed. They were masters. They didn't just expect you to pass their tests. They expected you to master the subject. They trained us how to defend ourselves and organize shooting instruction courses with us. They would bring weapons, earplugs, and floor mats to beat us up on. Mats were everywhere. Their entire garden was covered in maps. They trained us in judo, and when they sparred with us, they always end up flipping us over onto the mats. It was awful. I was a skinny kid back then, and I shit you not, I think they just loved to knock the wind out of me. I would see them smirking. They enjoyed toughening us up and hurting us at the same time. They beat everybody up, even my sister. That was the shit we had to endure training with Richard. They would come and trash all our Christian white supremacy beliefs and then beat us up all day long. I hated it, but if your house was surrounded, you'd want them around. They would have made it past the FBI into your house and then thrown you with a bunch of pistols. And you would have all gone out together, and if anyone fired you, they would have fired back, and they'd all be dead to you, and you'd all be safe. That's how trained they were. The Isaacson brothers were nothing to mess around with. I think they eventually saw that I was too young, too reckless, just not skilled enough for their thing. I was someone they would never have taken to a firefight because I would have gotten them killed and myself. They wanted young pups to train, and they thought that would be us. We didn't have the kind of experience or skills they did, but they saw potential. They saw us as potential recruits for them to construct a little army to their liking who would fight with them in the revolution because that's what they planned to do. They believed in fighting a guerrilla war, but also somehow in conducting the revolution legally. They believed in bombings, shootings, and killings, but they believed it had to be legal, had to follow the rules of warfare and the Geneva Convention. I mean, they had a very strange mindset. They were very knowledgeable about guerrilla warfare. They believed that if you put on an armband, identified yourself, you could wage legitimate war because then it fell under the Geneva Convention. They wanted war, but thought you had to wear a uniform to be legitimate. Louis Beam would disagree, but still they were all into the same thing. Everybody in the movement wanted to fight the tyrants. During the standoff at Ruby Ridge in the summer of '92, the Weaver situation was a regular topic of conversation at the meetings. Johnny and friends traveled to Ruby Ridge to offer support to Weaver, whom they knew from Aryan Nations events and played an instrumental role in his surrender. Here is a book signed by John Forever. Is it supposed to be Bangor? I don't know. I can't really read that, but I think maybe the implication is Bangor signed it. But here is a excerpt from Aberration. Many commentators... Okay. Likewise, federal operations targeting far-right radicals also intensified immediately after Ruby Ridge. Hundreds of recently released but highly redacted FBI PATCON reports warn of the possibility that the deaths of Ruby Ridge will be violently avenged and emphasize the urgent need to expand both the budget and the scope of the domestic counterterrorism program to determine the validity of the threat, but also to prevent further working alliances from forming among different radical right-wing groups. And indeed, PATCON's budget skyrocketed and the scope of its mission expanded greatly, both geographically and tactically. PATCON assets and operatives received specific instructions to beef up their operations. Undercover agents and informants posing as ideologically committed revolutionaries within neo-Nazi, patriot, and now militia groups expanded their infiltration and sting efforts, sometimes contriving bizarre plots to do so. This is actually funny enough. This is, for those who are aware of my David Gleddy coverage, this is exactly the period of time where he started. So that kind of backs up this concept here. Benger described how his life changed after Ruby Ridge as the mood and actions of those within his movement escalated, along with the most absurd methods used to neutralize post-Ruby Ridge radicalism. What happened at Ruby Ridge consumed my life so much. It was all I thought about. I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it, how I wanted to take on the government and get revenge. I would have a couple beers, call the office of Utah Senator Orrin Hatch, and shoot my mouth off about what I was going to do. I didn't said such stupid stuff that I ended up making myself a perfect target for a setup. In the end, they were like, this guy is easy. Let's just try to get him to bite. I became so paranoid and brushed up against so many sting operations. I just wanted to go away. It was like a scene out of the most horrible nightmare you can imagine. One agent tried to get my brother and I to get on a plane under fictitious names and fly to San Diego, drive and pick up a 500 M1 Garand rifles and take them to the mine in Las Vegas, where 300 Las Vegas skinheads who were supposed to rally there would then use the guns to take the city of Vegas hostage and demand the release of the order from prison. These were the kind of stings that were proposed. The white power movement was so heavily infiltrated with phony wannabes and federal agents, as well as from people that, from what I came to know, wouldn't have a problem killing a little kid. They really were the Buford Furrow types who were willing to go down and shoot up a school of Jewish children. Here's a photo Wendy took of Bo Gritz and Johnny Bangirder in 2023 during a visit in their home. Pretty neat. It's pretty fucking cool. Here's stuff signed by Bo. It's pretty neat. Among the crowd of supporters who gathered at Ruby Ridge were a PATCON undercover agent and a PATCON informant who were making recordings, which by now should come as no surprise. Following the events at Ruby Ridge, the movement was galvanized and they were mad. Talk about getting revenge was rampant and commonly voiced through the white power movement. This was echoed and amplified by the broader Patriot movement after the events in Waco, Texas. September 2nd, days after Weaver's surrender, Richard Isaacson, Dick Kaufman's right-hand man, opened a post office in Golden Valley, Arizona, under the name National Alliance. At the June 1993 National Alliance meeting in Laughlin, Nevada, which McVeigh was frantically trying to locate, Richard Isaacson, the scariest man I ever locked eyes with, would deliver a speech he'd given to Banger's Las Vegas crew years earlier. Here we go. This is one of my talks before the skinheads was entitled Honor versus Equality on the Basis of Criminal Law, and another was entitled Causality, the Categorization of Belief in Cause. In June 93, at a meeting of the National Alliances in Laughlin, Nevada, I gave an impromptu speech containing shortened versions of the subject matter of the two before-mentioned speeches I had given at the Christian Identity Skinhead meetings months prior in Las Vegas. The National Alliance is a non-profit educational corporation chartered under the laws of the Commonwealth of West Virginia. Besides speaking before the Christian Identity Skinheads in Las Vegas and in a meeting of the National Alliance in Laughlin, I have also spoke at skinhead meetings in Phoenix. And then it has an appendix, kind of goes into it. It kind of goes into the speech, goes into the outline. Isaacson's story about who attended the June 93 meeting would shift, however, initially telling people McVeigh attended and later saying he didn't remember, although he admitted my memory is as fallible as anyone else's. In midsummer, McVeigh's supervisor sold him a pager. Later, when McVeigh found out that his defense team had subpoenaed payphone records, including those in and around Kingman, he threw a fit, telling them that he'd just signaled the FBI to another source of incriminating evidence that they wouldn't find in other phone records, including the ones in his name from Kingman that summer, 40A's, or the famed but misleading Daryl Bridges calling card. She circled the portion here, so we'll just read that portion. And this is from Aberration, Wendy's wonderful book. All right, it's being really annoying. All right. Let's do this. Either way, Anderson's assertion that McVeigh called the house shortly before he arrived was curious because that call, along with other calls Moore and Anderson claim McVeigh made to their house, was not found on the Daryl Bridges calling card records. This was significant because part of the FBI and prosecutors' justification for dismissing the possibility of additional conspirators was their logically unsound belief that, in Roger Charles's words, the Darrell Bridges phone records could track anything and everything related to the plot. If the calling records didn't show a call, then McVeigh must not have made it. That the records shed light on the plot is not in question, but the records themselves, which nearly define the structure of the government's case against McVeigh, did not reveal who made the calls, nor did they preclude the use of alternative methods of communication. One member of the Jones team wrote, Tim's response that these records will further incriminate him simply does not hold water if Tim has told us the truth about everything. Further, I believe they will indicate other players. The payphone records total thousands of pages, and while my investigation of them is ongoing, I can confidently say at this point that the Jones team was correct. McVeigh's co-worker Darrell, who had observed him at the Kingman gun show, said that towards the end of the summer, he and other co-workers noticed a marked change in McVeigh, who was enthusiastic and friendly when they met him, but had become very distant and suspicious of everyone. Here, McVeigh placed an ad in the Spotlight that August. So here is him filling out an order for the ad, I guess. Here is the ad. Let's zoom on that. It says Law Launcher Replica fires 37 millimeter flares. 2 flares included, $125 each. Ad flares, $12 each. Pepper spray keychain, $10 each. Money orders only. Tim Tuttle, 1711 stock, and it goes into Kingman, Arizona. So, okay, interesting. This led to his contact with McVeigh on September 11th, 1993, at a Phoenix gun show where McVeigh was selling the launcher and also handing out the home address of Lon Horiuchi, the sniper who'd killed Randy Weaver's wife and also had been deployed at Waco. Okay. All right. Yeah. Then here's the excerpt here. What is this? Oh, damn it. Supplemental statements of the ATF. Statement relates to info received concerning Timothy McVeigh. It's received by Al Shear regarding McVeigh. He's a criminal investigator for Maricopa County Attorney's Office, Phoenix, Arizona, and retired Phoenix police detective and expert in hate crimes. He related that in September 93, he attended a gun show and had a conversation with a white male who was selling a shoulder-launched flare gun. Time ATF was contacted, information about the flare gun was discussed with FTB. Determination was made the device was not in violation of GCA or NFA. He said the subject had copies of a news article about the Randy Weaver, Idaho case, and at the end of the article listed the name and home address of the FBI sniper that shot Vicky Weaver. The subject told Shearer that if he was ever in Virginia, that he should visit the FBI sniper. The subject was also selling a military chemical suit, a type used in Desert Storm. The subject was also wearing a baseball cap that had the letters BATF on the front with bullet holes to the letters. The subject stated that the flare gun could be converted to fire exploding rockets, but would not further elaborate. He asked the subject what would be the purpose of such advice, and the subject responded, to shoot down ATF helicopters. The subject advertised the device in the Spotlight, a survivalist newspaper. The address listed was blah, 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 blah. This address is the same utilized by McVeigh in Kingman, Arizona. Shearer advised the ATF, Special Agent Zaper, that after viewing McVeigh on television, he believes that McVeigh is the same subject from the gun show in 93. All right, let's keep moving. Here's more excerpts from Wendy. Here is another from the FBI. Here is Al Shear, investigator. Prior to retiring as a detective, he investigated various hate crimes. Shear followed up on classified advertisements. So during August, September, there were 2 gun shows. Specifically, these shows were held on August 7th, 8th, and September 11th, 12th. Attended both of these shows, but only the first day of each. On display for each of these shows were numerous types of, all right, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is the same thing again. It goes into, so it goes into that he was selling another law rocket launcher. There's 3 feet in length, had a handle. So, okay, same thing again. All right. God dang it. Sorry, it keeps doing this. My bad. Give me a second. I'll get back to where we were. Sorry. All right. All right, here we are. Like this, so I don't lose my spot again. Shearer also recalls the barren display table, possibly 2 tables of the salesman stood out, but compared to the crammed display tables of the other merchants at the gun show, she recalls only seeing a display for sale on and or behind the salesman's display table, 1 law rocket launcher, several pepper spray cans, several pepper spray keychains, and 1 military green protective chemical suit. Which, if anyone thinks that's bizarre, that's actually not that crazy. I mean, I know plenty of people that got issued their chemical gear and never returned it and have it. So I mean, it's not that nothing weird about that. The other item Shearer recalls seeing on one of the display tables was a stack of single-page handouts that were yellow highlighted at the bottom. Prior to moving on to another merchant supplies, the salesman handed Shearer one of those handouts and pointed to the yellow highlighted area. Okay, and then it kind of goes back to the Horiuchi story. Here's another excerpt from Aberration, I believe. I think. Damn it, give me a second. Yeah. Okay, let's read this. McVeigh also visited a number of military installations in an attempt to determine how easy it'd be to steal weapons and explosives from these locations. This is the very thing that not so long before state and federal law enforcement agencies investigated more for the exact thing McVeigh spoke about to Carl LeBron before setting out his journey, and the very crime for which PATCON was ostensibly initiated. Interestingly, Roger Moore also spent a portion of that summer visiting military bases in an attempt to, according to American terrorists, search for evidence about the New World Order's buildup of UN troops and equipment at these locations, a rather flimsy reason, all things discovered or considered. McVeigh now added a new item to his gun show inventory, fuse-lit flare launchers that could be converted into quote-unquote rocket launchers. Moore designed the launchers, and McVeigh gave customers who bought them Moore's contact info so they could purchase replacement flares, of which McVeigh said Moore had thousands, just tons of them. In August, the Racist Spotlight newspaper carried an advertisement placed by Tim Tuttle, who was selling what has been described as a military-style anti-tank launcher replica, a surplus rocket launcher, or just a rocket launcher. When an Arizona public safety officer showed up at a Phoenix gun show to investigate the rocket launcher, Tuttle had advertised he encountered a man who identified himself as Tim McVeigh, who was selling flare launchers and a bunch of anti-ATF and FBI propaganda. After a brief conversation, the officer concluded McVeigh was not Tuttle. This is a strange determination given that when the officer asked what the flare launcher could be used for, McVeigh responded that they could be used to shoot down ATF helicopters and to demonstrate to him how to convert them into incendiary flamethrowers. McVeigh's response alarmed the other officer enough to report the incident to the ATF and FBI. The same Phoenix gun show, McVeigh made contact with an old friend of Roger Moore's tied to the whole international arms dealer thing, and there is reason to think that Moore himself was at this gun show and had accompanied McVeigh to other gun shows that summer. The summer, Moore also testified that he visited the militia of Montana. Days later, McVeigh went to the Soldier of Fortune convention of Las Vegas, where he hung out with Roger Moore. Also in attendance was an ATF informant who was selling the identical law launcher replicas Shearer had just investigated. Moore's friends Tom Posey and other senior CMA members were also at the convention just days before Posey's arrest. CMA being Civilian Material Assistance, the CIA front that Moore was associated with. Speaking of Posey in the early 90s, including during the spring and summer of 93, the FBI was investigating the black market sale of Stinger missiles as part of PATCON, but the much-talked-about missiles never surfaced. They were barking up the wrong tree, however, knowingly or otherwise looking in the wrong direction. I discussed this with Jimmy Falun Gong a bit on one of my Program to Chill episodes, explaining how the Stingers made their way through the deserts of Arizona, Nevada, and Utah via people connected to Roger Moore, and how Jack Oliphant also claimed to several people that he, like Grits, had trained the Mujahideen in those same deserts. Note, while Program to Chill episodes have been pulled, I will soon be uploading mine somewhere so they'll be accessible, and we'll share the link when that happens. I'd like to now add that some of the stingers made their way to an Aryan Nations member who trained others in their use and was later investigated for a plot to attack a federal building, but ultimately arrested for an assassination plot, after which he turned state against his cohorts. Here are some pages from a 22-page manual he wrote, which I have, that gives very detailed instructions about how to use a stinger and a training schedule. Here's more. I'm not going to read these. In April 93 FBI report concerning their investigation of Posey, dated April 29th, 1993, the same month as the fateful Tulsa gun show and just before McVeigh's arrival in Kingman. The significance of that gun show is that the one that Moore, Mahon, McVeigh, Strassmeyer are all known to be at, reveals how the Oklahoma City field office provided information to the Birmingham office about a gun store in Oklahoma, which was also involved in Operation Punch-Out. Roger Moore was one of the subjects of the Punch-Out investigation, which the April 93 report listed as currently pending. Shortly before the Phoenix Gun Show and Soldier of Fortune convention in September 93, McVeigh quit his job, moved out of his residence, and left the Kingman area for a time. While Don Jarrett was tasked with interviewing one of the owners of the security company McVeigh worked for that summer, another agent interviewed Bill, the other owner, who also owned and operated a private investigative agency. Bill contacted the FBI the week after the Oklahoma City bombing and told them about his friend John, formerly of Kingman, who'd been an organizer and was heavily involved with the Arizona Patriots in the 1980s. John, he said, had acted as an FBI informant during the clean sweep investigation of the AP and had provided information about Jack's crew stockpiling machine guns and LAW rockets, as well as their plans to blow up the Mojave County Sheriff's Office and the Hoover Dam. Bill said John was willing to provide information about AP members, Arizona Patriots, for those who may not have picked that up, still residing and operating in the Kingman area, and then offered the names of some of them. Perhaps contributing to John's willingness to assist the FBI in the Oklahoma City bombing investigation was the fact that he'd been arrested in California for a felony of an unknown nature. Regardless, that fall, McVeigh made his way to Arkansas, where he was pulled over and received a ticket near Elohim City, where Dennis Mahon happened to frequent and who Louis Beam said approached him about bombing a federal building in 1993. The same year, Mahon was deported from Canada as a security threat. The day after the Soldier of Fortune convention ended in mid-September, Richard Isaacson, a close associate of Jack Oliphant and National Alliance Unit Commander Dick Kaufman, closed the mailbox he'd rented in nearby Golden Valley on behalf of the local National Alliance, leaving a forwarding address in Phoenix. The FBI agent tasked with gathering the information about this man's post office box rental, as well as that of Stephen Colbert, and the two drifters, Robert Jacks and Gary Land, was none other than PATCON handler Don Jarrett, who was only dispatched during the Oklahoma City bombing Kingman area investigation for certain highly interesting people or people with potentially highly interesting information. Okay, it's interesting. Okay, that's an interesting nexus of people and information right there. I don't know. I don't know what may come of that, but I'm making a mental note of that for sure. While unconfirmed, another journalist emailed Sherry Seymour saying they now had evidence that Lands and Jacks were not the random drifters the FBI media made them out to be, but had long been associated with remnants of the Arizona Patriots. However, what his evidence was remains unknown, as the journalist died under mysterious circumstances soon after. About them, McVeigh acknowledged the uncanny coincidence that found them traveling to many locations that he had been to the same time he did, but said it was just that, a coincidence, but worried that all these type of coincidences would cast doubt on his version of events. Early on, McVeigh told his defense team that he'd contacted Elohim City seeking a quote-unquote army, came close to finding one with the National Alliance in Bullhead, Arizona. After Jack Oliphant died in November 95, his wife Margot continued to help defense investigator Richard Reyna as Jack had been doing. When asked if she knew Kaufman, Margot said she did and immediately mentioned the Isaacson brothers, who she said were frequently in the company of Kaufman. She added that before his death, Jack had expressed his opinion that all three were evil and warned Reyna to be careful of them. We'll get back to Kaufman, Isaacson, and the Bullhead City National Alliance in parts 4 and 5 of this series. After leaving Kingman in early fall 94, McVeigh continued to pay for the mailbox he rented there, where, shortly after the Oklahoma City bombing, a letter arrived in his box addressed to Mr. Robert Jacks, which McVeigh said must have been the result of someone mixing up the mailbox numbers. And where, as fate would have it, or in just another one of those uncanny coincidences McVeigh was worried about, Jack and Margot Oliphant, among others of note, also rented a mailbox. Next up, Part 4, Arizona, 1994. All right. There's some more stuff at the end there. There is also, then it says, next up, Part 4, Arizona, 1994. There are many ways you can support my research and writing if you're so inclined. Just being awesome is one way. Here's another. And then she gives a link for Ko-Fi, which I think was Ko-Fi. What is Ko-Fi? Is that like kind of like a Patreon or something? I think it is. It's a donation app. So if you do want to donate to it, she does do great work. I highly do recommend supporting her research. So go check that out. We'll be back with another one of these here soon. We'll be back with Part 4 whenever I record another one of these. I appreciate you guys joining me. I hope you are enjoying this. I know this is some deep level research, but I think it merits being put out in this format. But if you guys do want to support what I'm doing and you don't want to chip in a buck, you can like, share, subscribe, leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can also follow me on Twitter at TowerGangJose. All of those things are all things that'll, in one way, shape, or form will help support this show. But if you do want to support the show in the best possible way you really can, you can directly support the show with money over at patreon.com/nowayjose. 2020. The lowest level is $2. That gives you access to early episodes. I usually do 1 to 2 of these a week, and I try to keep about 4 behind the paywall at any given time. That gives you weeks of paywalled content. It's a great value. It's also, you can add free RSS feed there, and you also get a priority for the call-ins on me and Austin's weekly call-in show, which is already dead, which airs on both of our platforms at 9:30 on Tuesdays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. So you also get access to the pre-show there if you are a patron. The highest level is my sponsors, and I read them off every episode as a big thank you to them. I have my co-host in Tower Gang, at Tower Gang Toad, also at Brigade D's, at ZOVRACK, at _Zeal, Tim Tuttle, at Jolly Cleveland, Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine, big fan of the show, Torrin May, and Jordan Pearson. And with that, guys, we're going to get out of here. We'll see you soon. With that, we are out. Bye.